Okay. I chose this topic because I've been interested in profiling for a while now because I plan on doing that as a career as a homicide detective, and I know I'm going to use that eventually. So I know it's become more popular, so I wanted to know why, but if it was actually effective. And so at first when I did my research question, it covered all the possible uses for it, which are mutilation murders, ritualistic cases, child sexual abuse, sexual homicides, and serial killers. And when I had my meetings with Ms. Juarez, she told me that it was too broad, so I focused it, I'm not really sure why, but on serial killers. And it's actually pretty interesting finding out all the information about it. It's not something that I guess a lot of people would think. A reason why I chose serial killers though was because I wanted to know how they can do the stuff they do but seem normal and can blend into society easier. And right now actually my research question's changing a little bit because my research question is how the factors in making a psychological profile help law enforcement officers identify the serial killer. But at this point it might be too broad because I'm also using a lot of studies with police officers, and that is really would make my extended essay really long. So right now I'm just gonna focus it on how it's made and how it's the psychological aspect of it. Okay, so most of my sources came from when we went to the Rice Library. So I had a lot of books, but most of the books were on specific cases, and most of them were on Jack the Ripper, because that was one of the most famous ones. Even though they didn't catch him, it's one of the profiles that there's certain varieties, but a lot of them have a lot of similarities in them. I also used federal databases, but the federal databases only gave me so much because they can't give me the whole case file. So I only get like a very limited amount of information. And that's when Ms. Juarez helped me narrow down my research to where I can just focus on stuff that I do have information on, and just focusing on psychological parts that I can not only research on the books that I found at the Rice Library, but also in like textbooks. The barriers were the databases, because even I contacted someone from the FBI, but because of legal issues, they couldn't give me too much information. And I had to go through so many channels just to talk to one person about it. It was just a lot, and they didn't even give me all that much information, so I just let that one go. And I continued with what I had. I did have good information on the basic profiles and how they're made, so I was glad about that. Okay. So my extended essay is, to what extent do the factors involved in making a psychological profile help law enforcement officers identify serial killers? So a psychological profile is defined by the FBI as something that is used to identify any serial offender through their psychological and normal physical characteristics that they might have shown during the crime. And so in my introduction I talk about the different uses it can be done in, but in serial killers, it's another thing that I had to cover was serial killers. Serial killers, a lot of people usually think that if it's a person that's committed 2 or more murders, it's considered a serial killer. But it's someone that has made 3 or more murders, but has shown a type of signature in the murder. Like, there is something that they will always do at the murder. Like, there might be someone that kills a person, and afterwards, I think it was one that they left in a triangle. It was bleach, paper towels, and I think it was soap, that it was showing that they cleaned and that they're organized. And that is its signature, so every time that triangle would show up, they knew that it was the same murder. So this brings me to my subtopics, which is the crime scene. In the crime scene, the psychological profile talks about their behavior. So if they were organized, if they took their time, sounds really creepy. They took their time, if they had planned it before, like they had stalked the person before, they knew how to get into the house or wherever. They knew, or if they lure their victims, they knew what strings to play in. This brings me to the victim. The victim, in most cases, it can be chosen at random just by how they look, or if they're similar to someone that they have anger to. And so that, also how they kill the victim is really a big factor in the psychological profile, because it goes into how much time did they spend with the victim before killing them, how much rage was shown during the kill, and if they showed any compassion afterwards, like burying it or just laying it down, that usually shows some compassion. But if they just leave it how, like if they stab the person and just leave it there, that shows it had no remorse. And so those are the patterns that are usually seen and are looked for in profiles. And this brings me to patterns that are seen show towards narcissism, which is a person who has self-interest. They only think about themselves and see everyone else as even less than an animal, which brings them to lack of empathy, which is always seen at a crime scene. Okay, so in my conclusion, I talk about how a profile helps law enforcement, but it should be used as a tool and not just relied on. It is helpful, but it's not 100% accurate. And for further exploration, I'm going to be going in deeper at Ted Bundy, which was a serial killer, rapist, kidnapper, who was focused on young women and girls. And then I will also be talking about Dennis Rader, which is the BTK killer, which is the serial killer who murdered 10 people in Sedgwick County between 1974 and 1991.